Hi everyone, this is Dee Dee sharing another encounter with you from the internet. This one is from Cryptozoology News. It's titled, Group of Bigfoots Repeatedly Visited My Family and Kidnapped Me. A woman in Ohio claims that a group of Bigfoots recurrently visited her and her family starting in 1962, keeping her captive in a cave at the age of 12. The 55-year-old provided a full name, but asked to remain anonymous and to not reveal the isolated location where the incidents occurred. I prefer not to say where this took place specifically. No one wants an invasion of Bigfoot hunters on private lands. Let people go to the public lands of the Wayne National Forest to look for Bigfoot. People down in the hills love living where they live because it's quiet. There's fresh air, clean water for raising gardens and children, and being in the thick of nature to see the wild animals up close is something they all value very much. I'd rather that people work harder on gathering the mountain of eyewitness reports and experiences that have been hidden in the past decades in this state than to see them destroying nature, she told Cryptozoology News. She says she worked in the service industry for the past decade and that she was very active in volunteer work at the schools in the area. Reportedly, she wasn't the only one experiencing these encounters. They were witnessed in part by my parents. People do need to know that these things happen to me. It still pains me greatly, but at least I can talk about it now in some part, though without anyone knowing who I am. People are absolutely cruel, she explained. She also said that the incidents happened too many times to keep count of them, and that some of the neighbors had similar experiences, including some young boys fishing by the river. These events were all allegedly reported to the police. Once, she says, the huge one came back to take her and her dad shot it with a 12 gauge. The big one that had always come to take me out of my bedroom at night came this time during the daytime. Dad was about 15 feet from it. The shot was hitting this thing, and every time it hit, he'd stomp really hard on the ground with one foot after the other. My brothers and I ran up to my bedroom because the youngest said it was higher ground for better defense, and there were more over in the farmer's drainage ditch across the road. They were huge, too. I mean, what do you do as a kid of, say, 14 and you see something like that? Good thing my 3 brothers were there with me to help protect me. I yelled to them to leave or they'd be hurt. They finally left, and there was a lot of daylight left, though we were not to leave our 3 acres. My brothers wanted to go check on the neighbors to see if they were okay or if they needed help. The ditch where the beasts were purportedly hiding was across the road from the neighbor's front picture window. I can only imagine their horror at seeing what they were seeing, wondering if they were going to die. Sure enough, they looked pretty shell-shocked by the time we found them, she adds. According to the witness, most of the neighbors' children were hiding in the closet while the parents were out in the living room keeping an eye on that ditch. She claims the animals were of different sizes, male and female, but that the biggest one was 14 feet tall. He was a male with a head the size of a regulation basketball at least. His hair was long and about the same texture as mine, as I recall. The hair on all of them was about the same shade of brown, like the color of decomposed wood layer in the forest. I could see skin around his eyes that was tanned looking, and when there was facial hair, it was more sparse, with glimpses of skin showing through that area as well. I couldn't make out a neck. His chin was broad. His teeth were about the size of the nail on my middle finger, but they were more flat, and he had a mouthful of them, meaning the width of his bite was wide. His mouth was wide enough to show most of them. His eyes were dark with some white around them, less so than human eyes. They were kind, with crow's feet at the outer edge of them. His skin was weathered like anyone who spent too much time outside, like a farmer. His shoulders were very broad, though. I did see his collarbone on one side, which looked thick compared to a human's. He was muscular and heavily built, but in no way fat. There was an adult female and others who were almost as big as the female, but didn't seem to be young or old. I don't know if they were all related, but they seemed like a close-knit group. So there was the adult male and female, who seemed to be a couple, and the 2 others that seemed to have maturity and body mass suggested that they were about what we would consider 40 or something in humans. Other than that, I couldn't tell what age any of them were. Then the horrific kidnappings began. Many of my memories of these creatures were so traumatic that my mind hid them from me. I've no idea what else I've experienced with them in my childhood yet. You see, the memories are still popping up to the surface, and I've got to tell you, it's not a pleasant thing to know you've been taken innumerable times by these creatures across many hills far from your home. I have no idea what transpired while I was with them, but each time they took me, I was out all night long, she explains. Due to the stress, the young girl tried to sleep during the days, but her mother wasn't happy about this. I was being used in a tug of war, and neither side was winning. Certain people at nearby churches were told what was going on with me, so they'd take me aside, anoint me with oil, and lay hands on me, praying out loud, and all I wanted to do was lay down and go to sleep from that circus. I was confined to the house for weeks, not being allowed to look out any windows. Sometimes, she says, things were peaceful, but occasionally the creatures became violent. I was 12 years old when I woke up underground in a cave that was dripping water from roots I could see stretching below the ground. You can't imagine the horror. I was screaming my lungs out, and after a while I ran out of force to make any sounds, but the air kept coming out of me. I could see these creatures surrounding me as I lay there unable to move on this great slab of rock. I wanted badly to scream some more, but I was just too tired to do that anymore. When I relaxed, they all started smiling and laughing. I thought, okay, they could have killed me and eaten me, but they didn't. Evidently, some of them are kind, but then again, I've seen cats play with mice for hours before they kill and eat them. These were clearly not childhood nightmares, as evidenced by the incident that took place around the time I was 12 or 13. That big, hairy male was in the field across the road from our house, about 15 to 20 feet in, and Dad was standing in our front yard shooting at him. What got my attention was this pounding like a pile driver used for drilling, but there was no metal sound. I kept hearing this really long, loud yelling too, and finally got to where I couldn't concentrate on my book, so I yelled to anyone who was downstairs what all the racket was outside, who the heck was yelling. I asked who the heck we knew in the neighborhood who could hold a scream for that long. I recognized the shooting and asked who was shooting also. My mom asked me questions each time he, the big Bigfoot, came back to my window and took me with him. He took me with him many, many times. They told me to tell him no, I wasn't going, and that, not seeming to work, she pretty much gave up asking me anything anymore. She did talk to Dad about how to stop this from happening, that she thought it was affecting my health and robbing us all of our sleep. There was this concern that if they did the wrong thing, this creature could kill everyone in the house. Mom often wept to my older sisters about this big hairy thing that got into the chicken coop and how she needed to help convince Dad to do something about this before someone got hurt. She told them not to go near me and told me not to go near them. She was quite fearful, and in retrospect, I can't blame her. Dad, for his part, over the years, at times, would ask me if I thought my big hairy friend was around anywhere. Then the family decided to move her bed downstairs, but this appeared to infuriate the beast even more. I remember hearing him pecking at my window upstairs, but I was strictly forbidden from leaving the area for any reason. He'd bang on the side of the house, and Dad would yell at him to go away, that he wasn't going to see me anymore, and that was that. He made these loud grunts and stomping on the ground to show his displeasure. Another time, according to the witness, she and her father were driving near the woods when they heard a strange scream. I was 19. We were on his front stoop talking before I left when there was this very long, very loud, deep scream like a man was getting murdered up the road in the woods. Sound did carry, especially on cold nights, but this had excessive volume to it, and no human could ever hold a full scream for that long. I thought someone was being hurt up there, and he refused to call the sheriff's office to report it. I thought my dad had lost it. But she says she called the authorities as soon as she got home. The things they said really made me wonder if they were scared of the woods. The police. Why were they deputies, she remembers. I asked if they couldn't look for vehicle tracks or boot prints up that lane to the gate, and they finally said they'd go down there the next day to check. They appreciated that I described the place and it helped them feel more at ease. They kept saying the station policy was not to go into the woods for any reason. The creatures also appeared to be able to communicate by using vocal sounds amongst one another. The sounds they made were a deep bass, laughing, chortling, snickering, and sounds like someone who couldn't pronounce words as well. They communicated this way with each other just as the male did with me. I had no interaction from the younger ones, and the female adult only smiled or sighed heavily while looking at me. She talked with the younger ones and the big male about me. She looked sad. They used their hands to motion, much like we do when we play charades. The neighbors and other kids at school, she reveals, also spoke of strange occurrences and the dangers of being stigmatized for telling their stories. We weren't talking about our experiences with them, but were listening to what others were having to deal with at their places, with the same creatures that they gave different names to. There were no Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but they were called monsters, creatures, monkey men, giants, etc. We listened to what other neighbors would tell us about them because they thought no one was likely to believe kids that heard and passed it on. The neighbors next door never spoke about their experience after the day it happened. The others were not home when it took place, except the old lady living on the farm next to the hill across the valley, but she didn't reveal that until later. We didn't see her that often, so those who had experiences were being judged and laughed at by someone who did not. The woman says that she's decided to tell her story because she feels that it would help others come forward too. So many times I've read authors saying they wish they knew. They wish those who knew would share what they know with the world. Well, that's why I've shared this. Talking about these things has not been easy. For the most part, the trauma associated with these things did cause what's called traumatic childhood amnesia. I hope it brings awareness to the suffering of experiencers and witnesses and allows them to speak openly about what's happened to them. Unless we all speak the truth, the world won't know what's been hidden and still being hidden from us. Do we want future generations to carry on living the same lie? Our world is richer and more interesting than most people could ever imagine. These are not just creatures. They are quite intelligent and resourceful enough to keep from being caught or killed, she said. Well, that's the encounter. I hope that you enjoyed it. And again, thanks for listening.
Okay, you folks around the campfire, hold off a second. All right, folks, as you can see, I am back. At least for now, it seems that my internet provider has fixed my internet. So I'm doing a live show because I'm taking advantage of it while I can. Hopefully it won't go to crap again. That was another encounter read by Dee Dee. Thank you, Dee Dee. Great job. And Dee Dee also submitted some questions, which you can find in the description down below. I'm going to go ahead and open this up to the campfire. One thing I want to know is I would love to interview this woman and ask some questions such as, does she remember how they got her out of the bedroom? I mean, this is reportedly a true story. And until we can question her, we can take it at face value and discuss the particulars. My only question is how the Bigfoot got her out of the room. Y'all know I don't pull any punches usually. I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum in this particular situation because this was obviously, if this is indeed a true story, this is obviously an extremely traumatic experience for this woman, who is now in her 50s, I believe is what Dee Dee said. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to the people around the campfire to discuss while I read the chat. Darcy, I saw you light up, but I didn't hear anything.
I was just trying to think, because he kept coming to the window. Didn't he take her out of the window the way he was tapping and trying to get her attention?
Well, she said that he kept tapping at the window, and she said that he repeatedly took her from her bedroom, but that doesn't necessarily. My question is, did he pull her out of the window? And if so, I mean, why wouldn't they have just moved the bed? Did he climb in the window, or did she go to the window and willingly go with him, or what? Because it's a foggy area for me.
Yeah, I'm assuming that he took her from the window. She opened up the window. Um, but I'm not sure if she went willingly with the way she was screaming.
You got to keep holding your button down there, Darcy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I don't know if she went willingly because of her screaming underneath the cavern in the cave.
Yeah, but she has a memory of that, but she doesn't. Well, maybe doesn't have the memory of that. I mean, was that the first time, the last time? You know, did it happen every time? Because she did say that when she calmed down, they started like laughing.
Yeah, but you remember when I posted the one about the Civil War and how the soldier was taken to the underground caverns also. So I think it's a possibility that it's true.
I'm thinking, you know, the story sounds true. We know that they do that. They come to the windows, and I have suspected that they're probably taking a lot of girls out of their bedrooms. And maybe they never return. Maybe they do, and they tell their parents, and their parents are like, "Ah, you're crazy." You know, I mean, I know that there are probably tons of parents who, even if they knew it was true or suspected it was true, would still tell the girl, "You're crazy. You had a nightmare. That didn't happen." And they probably grew into adulthood, you know, with that being the way it was left.
But from the way the story told, the parents knew, so I'm trying to figure out why they didn't move her sooner to the back.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you.
It's a strange story, and I'm not saying it's not true. It's just there's a lot of gaps in it.
I wonder how old she is now.
In her 50s. Yeah, we got somebody, Wendy McGee, saying, projecting. It's obvious who has the unhealthy obsession, and it ain't Bigfoot. Are you saying Dee Dee has an unhealthy obsession with something or other? Why don't you clarify there, Wendy?
Wow.
Yeah, I told you. Me and Amy were talking about this earlier. Every time I bring this up, somebody has something smart to say in the comments, and there's a very good reason why this is an important topic.
You know, with me having my encounter, I can see where a person would be a little excessive trying to figure it out. And unless you've had one, they really need to keep their negative opinions to themselves.
I'm going to have to listen to it again. It sounded like two different readings going on at the same time, a little bit off from each other when I listened to it. So I didn't even get what I needed to out of it. I'll have to listen again.
Oh, did you have YouTube going at the same time?
Yeah. Was that my problem?
Well, I noticed y'all were in here, and I didn't know if you were listening to the YouTube side, so I went ahead and turned it on inside the Discord. So you would have got an echo if you had both going.
Yeah, that's what it was like.
Amy, what were you going to say?
I said, remember you and I discussed something similar to this some time back about, you know, how many gaps I have in my memory of that happened to me when I was a little kid down on the creek. And you had brought it up that maybe I had amnesia because there are gaps in my memory.
Yep, we sure did. We talked about that, about a week or so ago?
No, it was longer than that, but it wasn't too long ago.
I know we talked about it because I was like, and you kept telling me, and then just like you said, there was a lot of gaps in it.
Yeah, I don't remember walking home. I remember not being able to move my legs or lift my legs because I felt heavy. but I do remember being able to walk, but slowly, and then I have no memory of getting.
Well, that would explain it then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be cool to be hypnotized to see if anything came out, because I've thought all these years that, I was just afraid, so I blocked it out. The walking home.
Hi, Lainey. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Kiara or Ciara, either one. And Crypto, yes. Hello, everybody. I'm glad I am back online. I'm glad they finally fixed my internet.
But yeah, Amy, that would explain a lot. You ought to do.
I don't know if I can be hypnotized.
You don't know till you try.
That's true.
You should have a cognitive interview done that could help recall some memories. They do that a lot on the show Criminal Minds.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, okay, I'm going to bring up the points that Dee Dee sent me that she wanted. Dee Dee the reasons that Dee Dee selected this story and the things that she thought were important points to discuss about it. One, and these are in the description below, people, if you want to read them. She said she decided to tell her story because she felt that it would encourage those who have had encounters to come forward and share them.
I agree with that.
Yeah, you got to give her credit for that. No, that's pretty brave coming out like that.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about the Bigfoot taking her and stuff. I mean, as Wendy like to focus in on. I mean, people could be saying stuff to her about like, well, if the Bigfoot took you several times, blah, blah, blah. I won't continue that sentence, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
She was a helpless child. What was she supposed to do to defend herself with?
That's right. Can you imagine the fright she had? Man, oh man.
Well, my point is that it was brave of her to come forward because, just like any rape victim, they always feel like it was their fault in some way and they don't want to talk about it. They don't want, at least it used to be, they didn't want to testify in court. I can imagine there was a similar stigma with her as far as this goes.
Well, yeah, for her brain to block it out, something traumatic must have happened.
Well, even if it didn't happen, to let people know that she was taken and repeatedly, you know what I'm saying? It couldn't be easy for her to tell the story just for that reason alone, let alone everything else.
My friend who's been in therapy for trauma, for PTSD, said that her therapist told her there are 3 standard reactions, fight or flight, or freeze and appease.
It's very true. And some of us can speak with knowledge.
Dee Dee just popped into the chat. I see, Dee Dee, you've got your Mysterious Journals channel up and going. Yeah, everybody needs to go over and check out Dee Dee's Mysterious Journals and subscribe. This is where she's the one reading these stories, and you can find them there as well as here.
Here.
Okay, point 2 we kind of just covered, that it wasn't easy for her. Point 3, she reveals that the trauma caused by these events did cause traumatic childhood amnesia, which is the inability of adults to retrieve episodic memories of situation or events that were terrifying to them. Point 4, she also wishes this to bring awareness to the suffering of experiencers and witnesses regarding these creatures in an effort to allow them to speak openly about what they encountered without fear.
Well, I can speak to that because it took me 34 years to come out and let people know that other than just a select few, that I
You let off your button there, Ralph.
I was saying that it took me 34 years to tell than just a select few people that I did tell. You know, like my dad, and I told my wife, and other than that, I hadn't told anyone. It took me 34 years to come out and tell.
Yeah, point 5, kind of along those lines. She emphasizes speaking the truth so that future generations won't be compelled to hide their encounters, i.e., living with shame.
Well, yeah. Look at all the ridicule out there. Jeez.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Matt. So when I was 52.
Yeah, living with.
I mean, can you imagine going to school, a 10-year-old, 12-year-old going to school, and kids are vicious, man. They'll just tear it up.
What got me is that there are other kids having the same experience, but nobody in the community wanted to share with each other, and that would have helped a whole bunch of.
It's classic. If you speak no evil, if you don't talk about the evil that's going on, it didn't happen. That's the way most grown-ups are. They don't want to talk about stuff that's going on with the kids. And if you keep it quiet, then nobody else will know, and you won't have to bear the shame of it with the other adults.
Right. Because I imagine people have been ridiculed so bad they would have to move out of the area, you know.
Yeah, one thing that kind of bothered me about the story was that the father, well, both really, the father and the mother, seemed kind of wishy-washy about the whole treatment of the situation. I mean, and she said at one point that the mother was, well, first of all, the mother was talking to I guess the older sister, trying to say, you need to help me convince Dad to do something about this. But then also the mother was afraid that if they did do something about it, that the Bigfoots would come and kill all of them.
Yeah, and I don't understand that. Being a parent myself, I think I would have tried to protect everyone, but not at the sacrifice of one child.
Well, and then it took them a long time to move that bed downstairs. I'm actually wondering, see, the story seems to me to be a little disjointed, and I don't think it's the way Dee Dee read it. I think she read it straight from the article, but I don't know if it's a failing on the part of the person who wrote the original article, or if it's a memory issue. But it almost seems like disjointed, like maybe some of we don't know the true sequence of events. Like, it sounds to me like some part that is probably missing is the part where, like I said a minute ago, the parents are saying, oh, nothing like that's happening to you, you're imagining it, or you're having a nightmare. And then after a while they realized it really was happening, and that's when they moved the bed and things like that started happening.
I think it's a memory issue, Rick. You know, if you ever have a lapse in memory and then it comes back to you in bits and pieces, not the whole story together, and I think that's why it's told like.
Yeah, and she actually said something like that it was still coming back to her. She still hasn't regained all of her memories. And I'm wondering if part of what she's forgetting is the sequence of events when the parents realized it was true and that kind of thing. Because I just can't imagine any father, I mean, he shot at it. You know, at what point did he shoot at it? After he realized it was true? Before that? You know, when he just saw them coming around but didn't realize she was being taken? You know, because I just don't think that a father would have allowed that to go on for multiple times, as she said, without taking some kind of action, such as moving her bed, which is what she said eventually they moved her bed. So I think she's just not remembering like the true sequence of events because of the trauma.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Because it'd be hard. I mean, she's trying to put it together, and it's not coming out in sequence. But as she's remembering it, she's telling it. If that made sense.
Yeah, I think she may never know the full story and the full sequence of events and that kind of thing. I think she's just getting spots of memory, because that explains why it's so disjointed to me. Is that she's just remembering spots of things, and she doesn't really know where in the puzzle they fit, but she's putting them together as best as she can. So, Dee Dee, are you going to join us and add your 2 cents in here? You're the one who read the story initially and came up with all the questions and talked to me about how important it was to get out there. So why don't you come join us in here and voice your, share some of what you're thinking with us. Now, she also mentioned that they were evidently living in a cave. And I just posted another part of, who was it? Nate's encounter and I would like to expand on that because it's kind of associated until Dee Dee gets in here. And that's that Nate's, now this isn't very far from me. I've actually been down there. This Bigfoot, and that's the last show that I posted. It talks about how the Bigfoot, there was a cavern and it climbed up out while they were camping there and stuff, is about, I believe it was 80 feet down below the surface, 80 to 100. And the Bigfoot was coming up out of the cavern. This is like, he calls it a sinkhole, but I think it's just a big, well, maybe it was originally a sinkhole, but it's just a big rocky opening in the ground that goes down, and there's a cave at the bottom. And that's where this Bigfoot, at least this one Bigfoot, came from. And he believes that the whole clan is living down there, and that there's actually a whole network of caves and tunnels that run underneath Morgan County, Alabama. And I think it's interesting. I've always thought, I bet you they live in caves, they live in old abandoned outbuildings and barns and houses and that kind of thing. But this cave system down here is absolutely perfect. It's 100 feet below the surface of a mountain, which means that they have complete neutrality as far as winter time, summertime. I mean, they have a constant temperature down there.
Wow. Yeah. 100 feet down. Yeah, that's constant temperature. Yeah, they'd stay warm all year round and cool.
Exactly. It'll probably stay about 60, 65 degrees down there at all times.
Bonjour, messieurs.
Hello, Dee Dee. Why don't you break in here and share some of your thoughts about this encounter?
Well, considering the beating I took in all the comments, and I still love all the subscribers anyway, I got some good advice. My thoughts lie with the lady's state of mind. I mean, what she's really sort of diagnosed with. She's, this memory loss thing when something traumatic happens to you. That blows me away. How could you have an experience? I mean, and it's a real thing. This really happens to people, and just bits and pieces of it come back because you're concentrating on it because at that time you want to put it out of your mind.
Dee Dee, I don't talk about this much, but I lost my twin boys. And I was very young when it happened. And I can remember giving birth. And then the next thing I can remember is the funeral. In between all that, I have no memory whatsoever. Your brain will shut off what you cannot handle.
And I totally agree with it. It's just amazing how it's coming out, and she's in her, what, 50s now, and it's got to be pretty painful for her, but then at the same time, she's got to deal with, I'm sure, ridicule, being anonymous, didn't want her name mentioned anywhere. And I don't blame her. I mean, it's tough enough out there to share your experience, and then you've already taken a beating on what happened to you, and then you have to face more, hurdles. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. Look at what happened just to you on the comments, and all you did was read the story.
Yep.
Can you blame her?
No, I mean, I know there's a lot of critiquing and stuff, and I have a long way to go. But yeah, immediately, I mean, this particular field, there are so many people who want to call somebody a liar. I can't imagine being in her shoes. Like, how you say, put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? And somebody saying you're a liar, you're making it up, or, here's the problem, you're lying about this part of your story, because I believe her. I really do.
Well, that is the problem with hoaxers, is that they come out here and they'll make up fantastic stories and put them out there, and they're chuckling to themselves like little geeks in their mom's basement, because they think it's funny. But what they don't realize is what that does to the people who have a genuine experience like this. It takes away from them, because people like me who run a podcast, you have to vet stuff like that. You have to hope that it's true, and you have to be very careful about how you talk about it. You know, and it makes it difficult. If it wasn't for these people out here telling these crap stories, we wouldn't have to worry about that. We could actually help more people, and more people would come forward, I think.
And Rick, to interject in that, at the same time, that's the very bottom line reason why you have so many people out there who don't want to come out, because they don't want that kind of thing to happen to them. I think this woman was brave. I think she did it for many, many reasons. She wasn't thinking about herself. Obviously she got it out, but it was about the other people out there and how to be brave. And she said it wasn't easy. She was able to say this was not easy, but I think it was meant for the people who won't come out, or they're too scared to come out because of what lots of people do when you do that.
Exactly. I mean, she got absolutely nothing out of it. Like you said, she wanted to stay anonymous and all of that. She didn't want it connected to her in any way, shape, or form, but she told the story. That tells me that there was nothing there. There's no hoaxing. The problem is that's when people do, because people do tell fantastic stories, and they're doing it just to be, because they think it's funny. And all it does is make it harder for people like her to come forward. So when someone like her does come forward, it's even a more, what's a better way of putting it, a more braver act. Did that intentionally. But she's being more brave, because it's harder for somebody to come forward in this environment.
And think about the year. Think about the year is 1962 when this happened. In 1962, you wouldn't dare come out with a story like that, because everybody was so quick to say how many crazy people they had on their street, in their community, in their church, in their circles, their social circles. You were just crazy, and you weren't like them. And it was more, I guess, I don't know if that is clicky or um, labeling people. There was a lot more labeling back then. You didn't share information like you did now. You didn't find the things out in 1962 as opposed to now, like you find out, like the information that you get about things, where people understand it more. You have professionals that step in, or it's easy to go see a professional. Back in 1962, if you went to go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist for that matter, you were nuts. You were crazy, and there was a crazy house, and that's where you went. And it's not like that anymore. There are a lot more common things going around now, and
And you also got to think about where people got their information from: newspapers,
right,
radio, TV, but it was mostly newspaper.
Right, and that was all you had.
Question:
You
Where
also would have been spreading
take
things
place
by word
at?
of mouth.
Go ahead, Al.
People would have also been spreading the stories by word of mouth.
Yeah, and you know what
You always get
happens?
people that gossip.
You know what happens when that happens? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
who was it that did that experiment? They do the experiment of, 10 or 20 people, and they say one thing, and by the time it gets to the last person, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, the game of telephone. Yeah.
Darcy,
So
what were
true.
you saying? Darcy, what were you saying?
I didn't hear where the story took place.
Good question. I have to wait. I forgot.
No, she said she didn't want anyone to know where it was.
Yeah, she didn't want not only her name, that's right, or where it was, because she didn't want a lot of people out there trying to investigate what happened.
I just wonder if she can get in contact with some of the other people, because in the story, other people were having experiences, and would that help her come to terms with it if she talked to some of the other people that lived in that area that went through something?
Well, lots of people asked lots of questions about it, and the story, I had to answer some people just saying it is what it is. I mean, I read exactly this interview that she had with Cryptozoology News, and she didn't give out a whole lot of information. I understand her reasons why.
Yeah,
Oh,
Dee
yeah.
Dee. Go ahead, Darcy.
I was just saying, she was just talking about, the other people in the community were having some problems with them too. And I was just thinking if she could just get in touch with them, and maybe that'd give her a little bit of validation, for.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dee Dee, along those lines, what is your take on what I said a minute ago about the disjointed nature of how the father and mother reacted and how many times she was taken and when the event in the cave occurred? What is your take on that? Could you have gleaned anything from the original article, or?
I would just say that the parents were worn out by trying to ward it off. What do you do? What do you do in that case? They in that situation, you yell at it, right? Didn't they do that? The dad shot at it. He probably knew he couldn't take this thing on one. I mean, obviously, it was very, very big, and I think that the fact that the mom and dad were saying they were worried, especially the mom, wasn't it the mom that the whole family could be killed? They were probably thinking what we hear and see in some of these other encounters where they lose their temper. How they try to, people try to say, okay, there's good ones and bad ones, but then there's moods too. They have good days and bad days. Maybe they were thinking that. I mean, for that period of time where it was going on, they might have got that vibe from this thing, like, it won't hurt us, it won't slam up on the side of the house, it won't do this. Obviously, they didn't really harm her. I mean, I think her gesture of tug of war didn't mean physical tug of war. I think the gesture was they were examining her and wanting to be around her, much like Albert Ostman, who was taken. He wasn't harmed. They just were now. Who knows what would have happened to him? Yes, that's that possibility. But that's what I was relating to when I thought about it. Like, okay, maybe they were just wanting to spend time with her. Okay, what? Just as we are with them. What is this? Who are these? Things. They may feel the same way we feel about them. Some of them know who we are, and some of them don't.
Yeah, and if they could have reacted the same way as when people feed them and then stop feeding them, if they're taking the kid and then all of a sudden they can't get the kid, I could see the concern.
Exactly. Therese, go ahead. Is that you, Therese?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to introduce my daughter. She just come in. She knows a lot of people. She has a lot of friends,
Is
and
that
can get more listeners.
Tetra 941?
Yes,
Well,
that's
hello,
right.
Tetra 941. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
Oh, it's Minnie T.
Her name is Rachel.
Now we got a big T, a little T, and a mini T. Your mom's a really nice lady, by the way. She's a sweetheart. We love her.
Thank you.
You can call her Rachel.
Yeah,
I like calling her mini T. That's it, Matt.
I like it too.
Yeah, that's Minnie T.
Mini T. Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Sorry, I was actually doing something and I had my volume turned down.
So, I think that's kind of bizarre, when you really think about it. I mean, it's really
Well,
kind of crazy that it almost sounds like the parents don't care, but I think they did care. I wonder if the struggle with trying to get this thing just away from off their property was much worse than she explained.
I think the parents tried to ignore it at first, and then it got so bad they couldn't ignore it any longer.
Well, giving them the benefit of the doubt. As I said before, I think she's having disjointed recall, and I think it's possible that in the beginning she was telling the parents that she was being taken out of her bedroom, but they didn't believe her. Because the only alternative, and what I'm sure there's going to be comments under the video about, is that this was basically the parents sacrificing this daughter to keep from being killed themselves. Because, I mean, if they allowed this to happen, that's kind of what they were doing, is they were, well, so far they ain't hurt her, but that doesn't mean they won't hurt her the next time, and there's no way I would have let that go on with my daughter. So I giving them the benefit of the doubt, I don't think that they were aware of it right away or didn't believe it right away. And I think once they did, that's when the bed got moved.
Right.
And think about the neighbors. Remember where she mentioned the neighbors?
How
Does
close
anybody-
were they?
I'm sorry, what about the neighbors?
Where they saw it too. I mean, obviously, the neighbors have had experiences and whatnot with them too. I mean, they just didn't talk about it like, this lady did.
What I found interesting is that she talked about the neighbors as if she felt guilty about them being terrorized.
Well, they were hiding in a ditch. So, they knew they were around. They're talking a little bit here, a little bit there about it, but that's kind of crazy, don't you think? And then they go, what was it, to the second floor? Because wasn't it her brothers? I can't remember how many siblings she had. And they went to the second floor of the house. The neighbors saw these things hiding in the ditch. She may have felt guilt because she said, how I wonder how they felt, basically. They must have been scared to death. And then I think she sent one of her brothers over to check on them or something like that. And I would feel guilt too, because it was honed in on her, just like your encounter, Rick, where it was honed in on your cousin Teresa. Like, okay, I'm checking this person. This is the person I'm interested in. I mean, it just seems that way.
Well, yeah, especially since they kept taking her out of her bedroom and taking her, she said, over many hills and to their lair, their cave, so to speak, or their cave. And she probably did feel like it was her fault that the things were hanging around and terrorizing the neighbors.
I mean, these experiences really messed this lady up. And, I hope she's okay. I mean, just reading the story, I can't help feel sorry for her in so many ways, just, and not being able to really live a normal life because she was 12,
What about the church? Did the church people know and they were trying to anoint her to keep away the evil?
Right,
So what they were,
right, because they heard about it. It was probably their little, talk of the town. Like, what an awful thing, She must have hated it.
Yeah, Justice. I like Bigfoot Odyssey as well. I'd like to interview that guy because I just saw the episode about his encounter. It was interesting.
Now, how many times was this girl apparently taken?
I don't know if she really specifies how many times. I don't know if she really says. She just said it was
She said many, many times.
many, many times, and it was at night.
Was there like a time period over like how long of a time period was this happening?
up till she was 19, wasn't it? The last experience, correct?
I believe so.
No, it said that when she was 19, she had moved out, or actually, I think Dee Dee told me that. But she had already moved out because she talked about going to her home, so it stopped sometime prior to that. We don't have, we don't know
Maybe
how
the
long it
parents
took.
were victimized.
Like at that point, she's talking about sitting on the steps with her father and discussing something, and at the same time hearing cries in the woods, probably, in my opinion, from the same creatures who knew she was there to visit her dad. That's my take on it. That they know you. You know how they say you hear different encounters and they're familiar with a certain engine, a car, a truck, and the scent of a person. I mean, how many times have you heard them lifting their heads and sniffing in the air? Obviously, they have a keen sense of smell.
It might have been her that they were coming around because they knew that she was there when she came to visit her dad.
Right, that's what I'm saying. And so they knew she was there, so that's where she heard the scenario where she was sitting on the steps with her dad. I'm assuming she's 19 at this point. She's not living there anymore. She grew up and moved on. And they heard this screaming in the woods, and her dad wouldn't call the police, remember? And she decided to do it. And she wanted to take action. What she did was, you know, surmise that, okay, they're police officers. Why would they not go? And then one of them revealed to her that, oh, we're not allowed to go into the woods, you know. And then I can't remember exactly what happened after that.
I've got one question. Has everybody noticed something about this Bigfoot? I mean, he's habitually coming and taking this girl, and it's the same as a someone as a human being would be doing it. I mean, there's a parallel between that's a human nature.
And in this day and age, that person would be arrested and put in prison. I think they were terrified. I think the parents were terrified. I mean, how do you deal with that in the year 1962? I mean,
Hell, I mean, despite the year, how do you deal with that at all?
Yeah, hold on just a second. Yeah, Fly, actually, I am reading the chat. It's just that y'all are talking about stuff other than what we are, so I'm not commenting.
Yeah, I can imagine parents being so scared. Oh man, I can just imagine. Wow.
because you're concerned about your kids. You're worried about your kids. You're concerned about, most people are concerned about, and I think the
Yeah,
dad did a lot. I mean, especially by shooting at it and
well,
all this other stuff. But what did it really do?
sure, you're talking 1962 too. You know what the guy do? Sit there and shiver on his couch with a 30-06 in his arms. Just sitting there.
It must have been an awful time for that whole family. And then she had brothers, didn't she? And how they felt about that, and
Yeah,
and and them taking wanting her to take cover and go to the second floor for a better vantage point on what was going on. And they look out the window, and these things are in the ditch, hiding in the ditch. And that's where the neighbors saw it. And that's where she was like, well, I can't imagine what the neighbors were going through. And yeah, the guilt factor comes back in there, Rick.
You're right.
It's my fault. They're after me. They don't want you. What you're seeing out of your picture window, it's not you, it's me. And my family's trying to help me, and we don't know what to do.
Pure terror.
Really, really odd case. Right, pure terror, Matt. And it's a really, really odd case. It's kind of freaky. But I'm glad she came out, and, hope she's going to be okay.
She did say that the father shot the thing over and over and over. Remember, she said, and then it would stomp its feet every time he would hit it. So, if the father shoots the thing 5, 6, 7 times, whatever, and it doesn't drop, that had to inform their decision about how they handled the situation as well. And that's when you start feeling helpless. I mean, the thing's taking my kid. I've shot it and nothing happened. What the hell am I supposed to do?
And at the same time, it's showing them, I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you. I can kill all of you. That's what I think that the dad and the mom were thinking.
I got a question.
Sorry, Darcy, go.
Do you think the Bigfoot thought it was its mate, even though she was so young?
Are you asking me or
just in general, anybody?
I think I want to throw my 2 cents in. Everybody go ahead and chime in. I think she was a specimen.
I would say it probably looked at her as a child or a possible mate. That's probably what it was.
Or did they consider her part of their tribe once they took her the first time?
Well, here's the thing. She was 12 years old, so she's, biologically a woman and capable of bearing young. But her size and the fact that maybe she's not remembering that she was repeatedly raped or something, but I would tend to think it was either maybe he had a young male and he wanted them to, get to know each other kind of thing. But I don't think, because that Bigfoot was 14 feet tall, I don't think that Bigfoot in particular was taking her for those purposes. I think if anything, it was for one of his young, little young boy. Or they were taking her, maybe she was so little, and he was saying, well, she seems to be, by her scent, old enough, but look how little she is. And they might have just found her comical. Maybe that's why they were laughing.
But wait now. You're talking about the scent. How many times do researchers go out there and put, what is that they put out there?
Pheromone.
Even for deer hunters, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so you had that factor too. And maybe that was there by that time, and they sensed that, or this, you know what I mean? That was sensed.
Okay, from the chat, Lane says, very strange it would take her and let her go back. Yeah, that is one of my things, and she never mentions in the article, how did she get back? I mean, it took her across many hilltops, according to her. So it had to have been bringing her back. And that right there is a mystery to me, why they didn't just take her and keep her. Why was she being brought back? I don't quite understand that part. And then Robert Nacera says he thinks maybe she is creating this memory and that it was actually a family member that was abusing her.
Stranger things have happened.
Well, it may have been like what you said, Rick. He may have been playing matchmaker for a younger male.
Remember now, they did that with Albert, what's his name? Ostman. Remember he mentioned
Exactly, and she does mention that there was an adult female, an adult male, and I believe she said young ones. If not, she implied it by saying adult female and adult male, but there were multiples there. So that to me, that was the take I got from it, is that there were young males there, or at least a young female. There was young there, and I'm assuming there's a young male because I kind of think I would put it in that ballpark that that's what her purpose was to be there for the young male, and maybe something did go on that she's not remembering. And as far as the family abuse, I kind of don't believe so, because she would just say the Bigfoot came in her bedroom at night. She wouldn't say she was taken over many hills and into a cave and have any kind of description of that, and then she has nothing else. I mean, there's too many other details involved.
My question is, she was always laying on the slab, though, right?
Okay, hold on, folks. Airdrop, are you trying to talk? Because I'm seeing you light up and I'm hearing a button click, but I'm not hearing a voice.
Sorry.
Oh, so that was you're just fat fingering something, you're chatting or whatever?
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Go ahead, folks.
Well, I got a question. She was laying on the slab every time she was there. Is that what she said?
She only recalled one time, and she said that was the time when she was so terrified that she screamed until she couldn't scream anymore. And then when she finally settled down, they started laughing at her.
Well, that kind of says that she had maybe the young male did something to her.
Or they were about to. Or she didn't say it, or they were about to.
It's almost.
My impression was that was her memory, maybe the first time, I don't know, but that was her memory of she was just laying there, and because of where she was, that's why she was screaming, and they kept their distance until she settled down, and then they started smiling and laughing. And that's the extent of her recounting being in the cave.
This is the most bizarre story I've ever heard, I gotta say.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Dee Dee. How are you?
Doing good, kid. Yeah, it's bizarre. It's a really bizarre story. I know. I've never heard anything like that. She gives just enough detail to understand what was going on, but then you have to question why. You know what I mean? Like, why was that happening? Why were they that interested in that family? And I think they were more interested in her as opposed to the family.
I just don't get them bringing her back. I've never heard of, well, you hear of like, I've heard a couple of stories, like a female returned a child to their camp when they got lost and stuff like that. But I mean, not on a continuing basis.
No, there are stories about them being brought back. In what is it, Missing 411? What's his face's books? He talks about how kids were taken, and they've searched for them for weeks and not been able to find them, and then they'll find them just like right there where they have searched over and over again, but the kid is dead. Yeah, but this girl was taken to a cave, which would have been an environment where she wouldn't have died. So I mean, really, maybe that's what might have happened if these other kids don't die or whatever. I don't know. But I know they do bring them back dead. So why not bring them back alive? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that is true. I didn't think about that.
In the story, did he not say that there was other kids around that were done the same?
I'm sorry, repeat that. I didn't hear you for one, but I was reading a comment where a guy says, why even discuss this by, and then he leaves. You know, anyway, y'all comment on that.
Well, bye to him too. Go find another channel.
Don't let the door hit you in the ass.
Yes, indeed, Amy. That was so funny.
Yeah, if this ain't your cup of tea, honey, pass on by.
Amy's the guard dog, baby.
Well, I usually get a lot of crap when I post. Like, I think this is the third video where I've discussed, or we've discussed, there's been discussion of Bigfoot's interest in adolescent females. So they're implying that there's something wrong with that. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that in society, it's not acceptable for a 12-year-old to be looked upon or thought about in any kind of sexual manner. But the fact of the matter is also that biologically, she's an adult.
And I hate to bring this back up, but just like your encounter where Teresa was the subject, if that were the case and there was this accessibility, what do you think would have happened? Really, y'all were visiting your family. What do you think really would have happened if they checked everything out and they went by the property and were looking in and obviously doing that could have been more than one time? What do you think really would have ended up happening? Probably something very similar, unless somebody stepped up and did something.
I don't know that it didn't, because my cousin Teresa, she lived on the same mountainside farther down the creek road, so maybe the thing followed her home. Who knows? And I don't think that she would talk about it anyway, because that's the way she is. But I don't know that nothing did happen, you know. But here's the thing. It's important to talk about because people need to understand that this stuff happens, and you need to protect your kids. You don't have a 12-year-old girl who's gone through, who's become a woman, sleeping in a bed underneath a window, an open window. You know what I'm saying? You got to protect them. And if a girl comes to you and you live in an area that could be conducive to Bigfoot, whether you believe it or not, if she comes to you and tells you, hey, this big hairy thing is trying to get me in the window, then you need to take steps to stop it or to do something about it. And I think that's why it's important to talk about it, because it's repeated behavior on their part. They do it all the time.
Well, Dee Dee, you said in the story that other kids were done this way also, right?
Not exactly. I mean, they were talking about it. People in the neighborhood talked about it, but not any specifics on any other children.
Yeah, she said that they listened to the stories that the other kids were telling because the parents wouldn't listen to them, but she never did say what the other kids were saying.
I personally, I believe that they were using her for a prospective mate for one of the young males in their troop, and they were using her for entertainment. And that's pretty much what I'm.
Well, here's the other important factor for people to remember is that other girls who are found dead, who have been taken, are found without any clothes on. I mean, people, this is not about anything other than bringing awareness that this is something that they're doing and you need to watch out. Okay, folks, hold on a second while I close out the YouTube side. Okay, folks, that's it for the night. And leave your comments, share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until the next time, y'all take it easy. And feel free to join us in Discord. The link is in the description. Good night.